prayer on page 120, should you so desire to read it. So what we have here is a story that is really not very common in our current environment today. We don't do the churching of women. You might have heard of that expression. It was that women after the birth of a child were considered unclean until a period of time, 40 days after the birth. And then the child and the mother came into the temple before the priest and was purified. We don't do that today. We have different ideas. But one of the most wonderful things about Simeon is that Simeon was there to take Jesus and Mary and do the purification. But he said he had waited all of his life for the Messiah to be present, and he recognized that Jesus was the Messiah. How? I don't know. But he named Jesus as the Consolation of Israel. So I want to talk about the consolation. He doesn't say that Jesus is triumphant or that he's a warrior or a conqueror. He says that he is a consolation. So what is consolation? And I looked it up in the dictionary, of course, and it is a comfort received or provided after a suffering. Something that makes someone who is sad or disappointed feel better. Consolation. Don't we all seek that? I was told recently about some friends who went to a public library to hear a lecture from a tarot card reader. And my friends went, and they were not expecting that there was a crowd that filled the room. And I said to myself, oh my goodness. So why were they all there? What's in the future? That's what everyone wants to know. And how can I make sense of my life and what's going to happen? People are seeking that kind of information, but they're also seeking an affirmation and consolation. We seek it. We all do. We want that. I was thinking also about people who are in AA, people who are addicted to alcohol or drugs. They seek consolation. They find it in a bottle or a pill or in death. But what they're really looking for is comfort and consolation. And it is here among us. I've had a lot of experience with people addicted, particularly to alcohol. And I know from personal experience how difficult that is. I had someone who would sit with a glass of whiskey and know darn well that it was poison, and yet would continue to drink that poison. Unbelievable. So what is it about that substance? It's that it takes the person away from the pain and suffering that they feel. In the world that surrounds us, there's a lot of pain and suffering, but we do not suffer it when we embrace the Messiah. The other character in this wonderful story is Anna, a woman. In fact, this woman lived in the temple, apparently had been married for 7 years, and we don't know the full story, but she fasted and prayed in the temple every day and never left the temple until she was 84 years old. And she too recognized that Jesus was the consolation of Israel. So what are we looking for? What is the tarot card business all about? I'm reminded of two things that have happened in the last 10 years or so where people were waiting in desperation. One was, I don't know if you remember the miners who were trapped in the mine after an earthquake in Chile in 2010. 33 miners. They were found by a drilling apparatus that went down and found them, and they put a note on the end of the drill, and the drill was went up, and they were discovered. But it took a whole month. In fact, I think it was more than a month for them to be rescued. Imagine in the dark, without food, without water. And of course, the rescuers were sending that down to them, but for a month, they stayed together in the dark. Imagine. And then the other incident was the soccer team, the Taiwanese soccer team that were trapped in a cave. These were youngsters, like 14 years old, waiting, seeking consolation in the dark. I imagine seeking consolation in those circumstances brings a person to desperation. And I do know that there were members of each of those groups who sat with the people and helped them deal psychologically. And I understand that the leader of the soccer team was into Zen and actually helped these young people to sit quietly in the Zen position and to meditate. What's that about? That's about welcoming the Spirit of God that is with us. The consolation of Israel is something to be incredibly happy about, and it is available to all of us. All we need to do is to open our eyes, open our hearts and our minds, and we too will recognize the consolation of Israel, and it will be brought to us through Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.